Now it's time for Culture Talk. This is the segment where we talk about culturally relevant topics that you can use to start conversations about your faith. And I am joined today with pastor and author Gavin Ortlund. Thank you for joining us today, Gavin.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You are going to be talking about your forthcoming book, Why God Makes Sense in a World That Doesn't, the Beauty of Christian Theism. So this book is coming out in October of 2021. And you know what? I'm really excited about it. It centers on the Christian worldview and how it uniquely makes sense of the world. Now, one thing that you discuss is how the traditional approaches of apologetics are no longer as effective given the age of profound disenchantment and distraction. I love the wording there because that is so true. So what are some of those traditional approaches that are no longer as effective?
Well, I want to state this as a matter of kind of a difference of strategy and difference of emphasis, not as a total contrast. I don't want to be disrespectful to traditional models. God has used those powerfully, and they can still work today very well also. So it's not a total contrast. But I do think that right now, the needs of our culture are just a little different. And one of the ways I've thought about this is the philosopher Blaise Pascal said there's three stages you want to take people through when you're offering reasons for the Christian faith. He said, first, you want to show that the Christian faith is respectable. Second, that it's desirable. And third, that it's true. And someone could quibble with that. I don't want to say that that's the way you have to always think about this, but I do think there's some kind of psychological wisdom in that order. And sometimes, and this would be more the case, no, not completely the case, but more the case with the traditional approaches, you start with stage three, and all the focus is on truth. And we don't think about, first of all, respectability, just getting the conversation started. A lot of people are too busy and apathetic. They don't want to talk about the issues. They're not convinced it's not true. They just don't care, you know? And then secondly, the desirability of the Christian faith. And I think it's helpful to help people see that this is actually a beautiful and enchanting worldview as well. So as a difference of strategy and emphasis, I think the needs in our culture right now make it really useful to take that more full-orbed kind of approach.
Right. I love the words that you use, beautiful and enchanting. And that's something that actually I read in your in the synopsis of your book is that you talk about how it's essential to not only appeal to the mind, but also to the heart and the imagination as we articulate the beauty of the gospel. I think that's wonderful. Can you explain in what ways your book kind of reimagines the four classical theistic arguments to appeal to the heart and imagination?
Okay, sure. So what I'm essentially doing is taking four kind of classical theistic proofs, arguments for God, and I'm recasting them in a narrative frame. So I'm using these arguments as kind of um, aspects of a story. So I'm saying, let's take this argument and see if we put it into a narrative framework, how it functions, and then I'm really asking, what kind of a story is this? Not only in terms of, is it more plausible, but also, is it just a better story? Is it more hopeful, more beautiful, more dignifying to human beings, more plausible in terms of human experience? And so forth. So the four arguments are first, and these are the four chapters of the book. First, the cosmological argument, the argument for God as the first cause. Second, the teleological or argument for God from design. Third, the moral argument, the argument for God from morality. And fourth, the Christological argument, or basically the argument from Christ. And I take these four arguments as four aspects of a good story: the origin, the meaning, the struggle or conflict, that's the moral argument, and the hope of the story, and that's Jesus. And so I'm saying, imagine that you look at our world like a kind of story that we're all characters in. How do these kinds of arguments help you see a different story than, for example, if you're looking at our world through a naturalistic lens, as though there's nothing beyond nature? And I'm saying it's a more plausible story, but I'm also saying it's just a better story. It's more interesting, it's more enjoyable, it's more dignifying, it's more noble, and it's more enchanting, and so forth.
All right. So I love that you've separated these 4 chapters to really kind of unfold this story and really point to the strength of Christianity. Let's look at one of those chapters. So you're talking about the meaning of the world. So let's say you're talking to a mathematician or a musician. What might you say about why things like music and math make more sense if there is a God?
Okay, these were my favorite two arguments in the book. Uh, and these fit in the meaning section. And so the argument for math, the argument for music. And another thing about the book is I approach these as what are called abductive arguments, which simply means an inference to the best explanation. So I do not give either of these as a strong deductive argument that absolutely requires God, but rather just something that suggests God. And so they work like this. So for math, um, I just draw attention to some of the aspects of math that are kind of interesting and I would say really curious on a naturalistic worldview, but make a lot more sense in a theistic worldview or something like a theistic worldview. You could have something close to that that maybe could also serve the same role. So the permanence of math, the thought experiment I suggest is imagine if the physical universe collapsed into non-being, would it still be true that 2 plus 2 equals 4? And most human beings throughout history and most working mathematicians today would say yes. Math is because what else could 2 plus 2 equal? It seems to be this kind of permanent objective realm of truths that's separate from the physical realm. And so that just raises the question, well, where did this realm come from? And the theistic view is that these things stem from the thoughts of God. On a naturalistic view, it's just kind of curious. It makes you wonder. And then I talk in the book also about the beauty of math and also about the usefulness of math and how those things seem to make more sense in a theistic worldview or something like theism. On a naturalistic worldview, it's just a coincidence that math happens to work so well, that ideas and physical objects map onto each other so perfectly. And music, I don't want to go on too long here, so very briefly, I'll just say most of us have an experience where music conveys to us a sense of transcendence.
Mm.
And on a naturalistic worldview, the only way to understand that is in terms of our evolutionary psychology. And basically, it boils down to our brains are getting tricked. There is nothing transcendent or ultimately significant that is the referent of music. It's just basically our brains are being tricked into uh, thinking of something like that because of what people call an evolutionary spandrel, and people can read the book and see more what I mean more by that. But on a theistic worldview, we can experience music as a language. And Peter Kreeft and other Christian philosophers have spoken about music in this way. And J.R.R. Tolkien in the Silmarillion talks about the world being created through music, and that whole the feeling of transcendence we associate with music isn't an illusion, but it's actually a little clue that yes, there is something transcendent out there. And I think arguments like that from math and music are not absolutely airtight, but I think they're very powerful pointers or suggestions of the supernatural realm.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm definitely excited to read your book, and I hope that our viewers will check it out as well. First, where can they find you if they want more information about what you're writing about?
Okay, the two easy places would be one is on YouTube. I run a YouTube channel called Truth Unites, and I do apologetics as well as theology, ecumenical type work, and other parts of theology. The other place would be my website, which is just gavinortlund.com, and that has links to my social media stuff and my books and that kind of thing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much, Gavin. And if you would like to check out his book, be sure to look for it in late October 2021. It is called Why God Makes Sense in a World That Doesn't. And you can find it wherever you purchase books.